I'm joined now by New York Senator and Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, whose new book, Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning, is out this very day. It is available wherever you get books. It's upside down. Oh, yeah. No, it's on the screen. Don't worry. We got it. It's good to have you here, Senator. I want to talk about the book, which I read over the last 24 hours, and I enjoyed quite a bit. The last time I had you on Friday was on the day of the shutdown being averted. And you came on the program, you said why you thought it was important. And since then, we've had this enormous backlash. And obviously, you're in politics a long time. You understand this comes to the territory. Has it made you rethink anything?
No, look, I knew when I made this decision I'd get a lot of flack. I'm a smart politician. I can read what people want. But I thought, even though the CR was a terrible, terrible bill and would allow within the CR the administration to move things around, I thought a shutdown was so much worse, 20 times worse. And let me explain why so people understand it. Under a shutdown, the executive branch has absolute power to determine what is, quote, essential.
Right.
They have the sole power. Court rulings have said the courts have no say. Right. Now, under normal time, if it was a shutdown, okay, it'd be a Republican government. They do that. You have these fanatics, right, these anti-government, vicious nihilists in charge. They can say anything. Anything is not essential. So it could have been today if we were in the shutdown. They said, feeding hungry children, not essential. Eliminate SNAP. 2 days from now, the only thing we need in transportation are air traffic controllers. Cut off all mass transit funding to New York and the other cities of the country, all transit funding. Day 6, Medicaid. They could cut off Medicaid almost totally. So within 2 weeks, they could just so decimate the federal government, almost throwing a bomb at it, that we could never recover. And wait, one more thing that's worse. There's no exit ramp. In other words, how do you get out of the shutdown? Solely up to the executive branch. And one Republican senator who's close to these horrible Doge Musk people said that they expected to close it down for 6 months, 9 months, till the whole federal government was obliterated. Musk's dream to get $2 trillion out of the federal government could happen under a shutdown. So I felt the very people who are upset now, if we went through with the shutdown and all these things happened, would be coming 2-3 weeks later and saying, get it open, get a SNAP open, get mass transit open. I'd say, well, it's a shutdown. We can't. They said, well, why'd you let that happen? So one more thing. Yeah. I knew I'd take a lot of flack. But, you know, when you're a leader, sometimes you have to do things that you know are right, despite the consequences. I've always said to people in politics, the higher up you climb, the more fierce the winds blow. The only thing that keeps you from being blown off course is your internal gyroscope. That's what I used. So I take that seriously, that sort of catastrophic nature. I thought so long and hard about it. Well, I want to sort of pivot it a little to more of a tactical decision, because there was something that happened here that doesn't normally happen, which is they knew they needed Democratic votes and they cut you out entirely. Entirely. Now, when that has happened before, Republicans have filibustered successfully and forced Democrats to the table. And so just purely at the level of how the tactics brought us to this point, I want to play some of the criticism, again, not from like backseat drivers or not from me on cable news, but people like Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi. Take a listen.
Look, Chuck and I disagreed as it relates to the approach and outcome.
I think there is a deep sense of outrage and betrayal. And this is not just about progressive Democrats. This is across the board, the entire party.
I still support Senator Schumer as leader, but I think the only way that we are going to be effective as a caucus is if we change our tactics.
I would have liked to see, when Chuck Schumer had leverage here, to say we need A, B, C, and D for the Democratic Party and force the Republicans to meet him halfway on those issues.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day.
They said, okay, he said leverage, I think it was the governor.
And Nancy Pelosi said, I myself don't give away anything for nothing. I think that's what happened the other day.
The only leverage we had, they weren't going to negotiate with us. So there were two choices only. It would be nice if we had a third choice. We tried to get that third choice with the 30-day extension that Patty Murray tried to get some more moderate Republicans on the Appropriations Committee to go along. They wouldn't. So we were faced only the Senate, not the House. They had it a little easier because they could vote no against the CR and not cause a shutdown. Right. But in the Senate, the only two choices were these choices, period. And the choice of the shutdown was so severe You're giving them the keys to the city. Why would we? Look, this guy, the worst of them all, is this guy who's head of OMB named Vogt, V-O-U-G-H-T, but people hear the word vote. He already has a plan to shut down a large church.
He's doing it right now.
No, he cannot. Now, if you don't have a shutdown, you can go to court. Right. And we've had some successful results in the courts. A lot of the judges we put in, Chris, you know, the 235, we've won about 85% of the cases. Shutdown, no court. They make the decision, and they can make it quickly, easily, and across the whole federal government, not just the things that were in the CR.
But here's to me my understanding of the critique that's broader than the specifics here, which is about the level and depth of crisis we're in and the appropriate tactics to meet them. Mm-hmm. And so what I think people think is, first of all, we all know the Senate functions on unanimous consent. It's how anything happens. We've watched real pains in the butt, Tommy Tuberville, basically bring the place to a halt. Just denying unanimous consent because he was mad the Department of Defense might somewhere pay for a portion, right? The idea of how cataclysmic that shutdown, I hear what you're saying. But what I'm hearing from people, and there's a lot of them, is right now a crisis is happening unlike anything the Republic has faced, maybe since even the Civil War. Right. Most Americans don't quite grasp it. And it's your job as the most powerful Democrat to use whatever tactics you have to communicate that. And by going along with this, you have missed this opportunity to tell the nation just how bad it is.
There's only one choice to going along with it. Shut down. We have to pick the fights, and I want to fight Trump as much as anybody and stop him and not give Republicans help. But in this situation,
doesn't it call the question? Doesn't the crisis create the attentional vortex that is necessary? Because right now, people have no idea that they're going to basically get rid of all of American universities and all of American science funding. We try to communicate it every night, but there's nothing like a crisis to drive that home.
But the drama of the shutdown, eliminating all of these things, would do such damage substantively, that I couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't live with it. You know, I know there's the idea that, okay, people will sit and negotiate with us because they're doing bad things. That ain't these Republicans. They wouldn't sit with us for nothing because their overall goal. The Republican Party is a new party. Right, it's controlled by these MAGA right billionaires. They want two things. They want to pay no taxes, so get rid of all the spending, even if it's for. I mean, I was up today, you know, we had a Medicare Day of Action, Hakeem and I, and senators and congressmen went and talked about Medicaid. I went up to Montefiore Hospital, which covers all the Bronx. It's the only cancer center in the whole Bronx. 80%.
I grew up a block from Montefiore Hospital.
There you
Continue.
Go. Well, 80% of the people there are Medicare and Medicaid, and they're the only cancer treatment. If they cut Medicaid by 20%, children would die.
Okay.
Children would die.
Okay.
And that's what would happen with a shutdown.
Well, I mean.
So you say have leverage. We should. But in this case, the choice given to us, because they couldn't, and I don't blame them, they wouldn't negotiate with the Democrats because they had all the votes because Trump is such a hammer, gave us only two choices. So if there was not a third choice.
Okay, so then the question is, okay, these people won't negotiate. This was the one opportunity for leverage because of the need for a filibuster-proof majority. They're not going to have that on reconciliation, right? They're going to have it, right?
There are going to be other opportunities.
But then because what people hear is like, we're going to lie in the cut until they self-destruct. Like, what's the plan? But then what is the strategic plan?
Here is the plan. Here's what we're doing right now, okay? There are two things I want to say. One, every day we are hammering away at Trump. And we have a simple thought that unites the Democratic Party from one end to the other. He's asking the middle class to pay for tax cuts for the billionaires. It unites us all. Bernie Sanders likes it, and my most conservative members like it. We're hammering away at that. Today it was Medicaid. Tomorrow it's going to be, in the next few days, it's going to be tariffs. He's raising those tariffs, raising your costs, Mr. and Mrs. American, by $2,000 a year if he raises all these tariffs, so that he can use that money for tax cuts for the billionaires. He's cutting your education funds, and so your kids don't get a great education, and your school taxes will go up for that. So we have started doing this day in, day out, every day, fighting relentlessly. His numbers have started to go down from 51 to 47. If we keep at it and keep at it and keep at it, His numbers will be much lower. He will not only be less popular, but less effective. Second, we will find the moments where we shouldn't give them votes. Hakeem and I met yesterday. We're exploring that right now. And there will be times, just like this instance, where people will say, don't give them the votes because you have the leverage. There will be instances, not like this, where a shutdown would ensue, but where we will have the higher ground. And we're going to do it. Watch us.
Okay, but here's what I would say in response to that. And again, I'm channeling people as much as I
Hey, this is a democracy still. Let's hope it stays.
Well, here's what I'm saying is that all of those things you enumerated, which all sound like good politics to me, are the kinds of things that you'd be doing if Mitt Romney were president. That, like, there's this weird asymmetry right now, which is that they are acting in this totally new way, in which they are ambitiously trying to seize all power and create a presidential dictatorship in the United States of America. And the Democratic opposition is acting like, well, if we can get their approval rate down a few points, then what? What happens?
Well, what happens is, look, first, we get it way down. He's going to have much less. This worked in 2017. You say it didn't. Now it's a different government.
It's different, though.
Oh, it is different.
My God.
But health care, we beat him. Taxes, we beat him. And guess what we did? Guess what we did, Chris? We took back the House and won in the Senate, and then we were allowed to do all those good things. This is not the only tactic. We have to stand strong in certain instances and not give them the votes at all. But there are instances with this. The two work together.
Okay. Again, I don't disagree with any of that. But the difference to me between 2017 and now, and I've been at this desk for both of them.
It's different.
It is a full-fledged assault on the constitutional order that has not been seen again.
Well, that's
certainly in my life.
That is true.
But the question then becomes...
But that's not the spending part.
That isn't. But then the question becomes, what is the role of the minority in resisting that? That's distinct from, we're going to beat them on health care, we're going to beat them on spending Medicaid.
Look, if our democracy is at risk...
It is at risk, yes.
Sorry, it is certainly at risk.
Well, do you believe it is?
But if
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you believe it's at risk?
Trump doesn't obey the Supreme Court, which may happen, you led up to it here, then we will have two courts. We will have the federal courts, which hopefully John Roberts will stand up and make it happen. But we'll have the court of public opinion. And if that happens, as you pointed out, we have had rule of law since the Magna Carta, okay? And if that happens and the rule of law goes by the wayside, I believe that there will be very, very there will be immediate and strong reaction from one end of the country to the other in ways that we have never seen. And that's what will happen. And it's not just up to us. The people will have to rise up, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, not just, people, everybody. But our democracy will be at stake then. And if the people make their voices heard and are strong and stand up, and we join them, I believe we can try to beat that back. We can beat that back. But it's on that one. If democracy is at risk, that's a little different than what we're talking about now. Even a shutdown, as horrible as it is, we'll all have to stand up and fight back in every way.
I think actually this is useful because I do think, like, just in a genuine sort of good faith way, that there's a lot of people, and I think I probably count myself among them, who think that that's where we are right now. Well, that the plan being deployed right now.
You may be right. I don't think so. We're there. I think
we're not there yet.
Well, I think we're getting there, and we have to be really vigilant. I just had a meeting today with the Judiciary Committee to decide how we're working through this as it goes further. It hasn't been up to the Supreme Court yet, which would be the classic if they disobey the Supreme Court. We're on our way there, God forbid, but I think we are, and we'll have to go at it and at it and at it. And that is different than anything else. Different than anything else. It's a quantum leap different because our democracy is then 248 years of American democracy. The Magna Carta is out the window, and we will all have to take extraordinary action.
You have a new book.
Yes.
And I would like to talk about it.
Good.
So I'm going to take a quick break, Senator. We're going to talk about anti-Semitism in America, a warning, right after this quick break.
Great. Thank you.
I'm back with Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who is the highest elected Jewish official in America and the author
ever, by the way,
of the brand new book, Anti-Semitism in America, a Warning. You write about this in the book about there's sort of a really interesting thing about your relationship to your Jewish identity.
Yes.
Its centrality or marginality in terms of your public-facing role and the decision to write this now.
Yes. Why did I write the book? Look, I was born in 1950. For the first 50 years, 1950 to 2000, what we Jews referred to as the Golden Medina, the Golden Era. Jews never had it so good. Economically, we were advancing from working class and poor up into the middle class. So were Irish, Italian, everybody else, but it was great. But second, there was virtually no anti-Semitism, much less. Why? The shadow of the Holocaust hung over America. And so Jews who were previously not allowed to live here or not allowed to work here or whatever, that all left. Even sort of the innuendos were decreased. It was not good to say it. So it was a great era. Starting in about 2000, it begins to change. When bad things happen, things always seem to turn on the Jews. So we had 9/11, and there was some of it. Remember, 400 Jews. The myth was 400 Jews were told to leave early.
In fact, that's been revived in this era of right-wing conspiracies.
Yes, it has. 2008, you get the international financial crisis, George Soros, the Jewish conspirators. But it never really got that bad until October 7th. And after that, it just skyrocketed dramatically. Let me just finish, okay? And things we never saw before happened. They'd throw a rock through a Jewish deli in Philly. They don't know what the politics of that man was. In my neighborhood, the head of the Brooklyn Museum was Jewish. Brooklyn Museum had nothing to do with Israel. It's paint smeared all over her. Jews spat upon. Jews vilified. Jews just treated the way we never did. So for the first time, Jewish people began to say, not that they thought it would, but they were worried, we're worriers. It could happen here. Because they remembered there were golden eras before, and when things went bad, they turned on us in all kinds of ways. And so I started thinking about this. I gave a speech on the floor condemning anti-Semitism, particularly on the left, since I was a progressive. I thought I'd have more say talking about on the left, although it's awful on the right, too. And I kept thinking and thinking and thinking and said I had to write the book. The book, in conclusion, is aimed at 5 different audiences. First, my generation. We feel alone. We feel sort of isolated. What is happening? I thought I could, going through my experience, not so different than my generation's experience, would give people some help in feeling that they're not alone. Second, to their children. Our children are Jewish and proudly Jewish and pro-Israel, most of them, but they don't know the history, how Israel was beleaguered, how so much change occurred from back then. Third group are Christians who have goodwill to Jews. And they understand there's anti-Semitism, but their sort of attitude is, you're making too big a fuss about it. They don't carry 5,000 years of history on our back, and when it starts, sometimes it doesn't stop. Fourth group was the left, because I felt an obligation to talk to the left about anti-Semitism, where I thought I could better than others. But finally, it's America. And I hope every college and every high school will make this either required reading or at least advisory reading, because people don't know the histories. Of the young people, 20% think the Holocaust is a lie, and another 50% have no knowledge what it is.
You know, campuses have been obviously a real focal point in all of this, and I know that from friends of mine who are Jewish who are very, very focused on what's happening on campus. It's also become this kind of fulcrum in this moment in our politics. You've got the Trump administration writing to Columbia, right, that had these protests saying we're cutting off $400 million in federal money unless basically you kind of hand over the administration of your university. I want to read you this just because this really struck me today. I saw someone who is an epidemiology PhD student who had their dissertation at Columbia canceled. Okay? Someone who studies substance use disorder.
Because of this 400.
This is what was told. This project has been terminated due to unsafe anti-Semitic actions that suggest the institution lacks concern for the safety and well-being of Jewish students. This is a PhD dissertation in epidemiology. Columbia University may request funds to support patient safety and orderly close out the project. Do you think this is a good faith attempt to deal with anti-Semitism?
Look, let's start. Columbia didn't do enough, especially in the early days, to go after anti-Semitism. I've spoken to Jewish students there who were vilified and even hit and hurt. And they didn't do enough. Having said that, what Trump does is he takes this blunderbuss. He just takes $400 million. We don't know why, where, when, who. Probably a lot of that $400 million goes to cancer research or Alzheimer's research like this at Columbia Presbyterian. A lot of it may go to helping educate students, and it'll hurt the 98% of students who never protested, even the Jewish students who might have been picked on. So this is outrageous. It's just aimed at the universities. If you have some instance where someone didn't do something about anti-Semitism and should have, go after that person or that group. But this is aimed at hurting universities, and I think it's spreading, and I think it's very, very wrong.
This, you just said, you were saying before, it was interesting, you were saying Jewish, pro-Israel, most of them, comma, and you have this stuff in the book that's great about all these sort of shticky Jewish jokes about disputation, right? You know, two Jews in a room, three opinions. There's the guy on the island who builds a second synagogue he doesn't set foot in, right?
Yeah.
You know, it seems to me...
My favorite one is the 3 sentences that describe each Jewish holiday.
Yes, okay? They tried to kill us.
They tried to kill us. They failed. Let's eat.
Right.
But it shows you the Jewish mentality.
Right, but on this question of disputatiousness, to me, really, this is where, because I know Jewish people who are protesting at these universities.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, but it seems to me that one of the things that happens here is that there is this conflation of Israel and Judaism, which is both the conflation of the anti-Semites who are throwing the rock through the Jewish deli, right? Yep. But then in the defense of Israel, it seems like the defenders kind of want to write out the Jews who are opposed to Israel's actions, or anti-Zionist.
You're looking at somebody who wrote a very strong speech, which got a lot of negative reaction in the Jewish community, criticizing Netanyahu for the way he conducted the war. I wrote that speech because I had to show that you could be very pro-Israel and disagree with Netanyahu's policies. And I think it's really important to say criticism of Israel per se is not anti-Semitic, but it's too often shaded over into anti-Semitism. Overt anti-Semitism, and sometimes right on the edge. Let's just take an example, okay? From the river to the sea. That's Hamas's slogan to wipe out all the Jews in all from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, all of them. And in fact, in Hamas's charter, they quote an Arab proverb. Is that a Jew behind a tree? Chop down the tree and shoot him. When people say that, some of them don't know it's leading to anti-Semitism, but it is. And I thought it was important to alert. You know, when we hear dog whistles that hurt certain ethnic groups, we say we shouldn't do those. That hasn't happened yet here, and I wanted to alert people to the danger of some of these actions, which are not just protest per se and criticizing Israel, perfectly legitimate. I've done it myself, but slide over into anti-Semitism and aiding and abetting anti-Semitism.
So, first of all, I should say that Likud's official position about the Israeli state right now is that it has the river to the sea. I mean,
no,
the governing.
That is Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. But
they just rejoined the government.
One of the reasons I gave my speech against Netanyahu is I said we need a two-state solution.
Right.
But that's not. That's a little different than what Hamas is saying.
But here's the thing that struck me in reading your book is that it seems to me there's these sort of two periods here. There's the trauma of October 7th, which is the worst mass killing of Jews since the Holocaust, and just horribly traumatic, both if it were any people happening with no 5,000-year history, and extra traumatic with the 5,000-year history.
Right.
And then there's what happens afterwards in the protest movement. And it just seems to me there's a little conflation between what I think was shown in the polling and generally a very, very small active support for Hamas in the wake of that.
Well,
and then the protest movement that grows up as 50,000 people, including 15,000 children, are killed with American bombs.
And I ache for them. I see this picture of a kid with no legs. I ache. I see this little girl whose parents were killed, Palestinian. I ache. But what's underplayed totally is the role of Hamas in that tragedy even afterwards. Hamas uses, by doctrine, the innocent Palestinians as human shields. They put rockets in hospitals. They put schools there. Wait, the late head of Hamas said these Palestinians who were killed are necessary sacrifices. His words.
They've said it.
The media doesn't play it up, and the world doesn't realize the difficult position Israel is in, trying to make sure that Hamas doesn't come back, because we know what Hamas would do again, because Hamas has been, I don't know any other country that has used people as human shields the way Hamas has.
Isn't
and
every insurgent Viet Cong? Any insurgent
Never the same
army?
way. Never the same
Really?
way. I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Insurgent armies sometimes run into trouble that way.
Well,
but
they're
it's not
always amongst the populace. That's the way an insurgent army operates.
It's not a policy the way it is with Hamas, rockets in hospitals and using humans as human shields. But what I'm saying is The media, they showed every day pictures of Palestinians being hurt, and we ache for that. They almost never mentioned that a lot of these were human shields. A lot of them.
What does that even mean? If the size of Gaza is less than it's basically Manhattan, and it's got 2 million people in it.
But Chris, all I'm saying is a good amount of the blame for the tragedy here, which we hate. I think Israel didn't have the right policies in certain areas, and I criticized them regularly, as you know. But no one seems to mention it. When I see these protesters, I say, well, what about Hamas? They ignore them. Right. Ignore them. So there's only one side to this, and that's not fair.
I'm going to have. Can you just say one more block? You have a place to be.
Okay, I know we want to talk about,
But I want to ask one more question.
Okay.
About
Trump.
Yes, and about what the president said about you and all that. So
okay.
All
right.
You're going to stay here.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Joining me again, New York Center Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, author of the new book, Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. You know, there's lots of awful things Trump says all the time. A thing I find personally truly despicable is this use of the word Palestinian as a slur, as an insult, which he has now directed towards you multiple times, saying even that you're not Jewish anymore.
Yeah, don't tell my mother. Look, Trump has far too often tolerated all kinds of anti-Semitic things. He regards the Jews sort of as transactional. So, money, the Jews. Votes, the Jews. But no real understanding of who we are. And look at the things he's done. In Charlottesville, both sides are to blame. He sits down with a known bigoted anti-Semite, Fuentes. He has a lot of people in his administration who believe in this great replacement theory, which is an anti-Semitic troll. Or not troll, philosophy, dangerous thinking. And he cut off all the money. We worked very hard for this called nonprofit security grant, money for synagogues that have been accosted by anti-Semitic activities, for doors, for windows, for protection. So if you look at his actions, a lot of them, he's not protecting Jewish people. Again, transactional. You know what he ought to do, Chris? He ought to read my book. He might learn something.
I learned today that there's a guy who runs the anti-Semitism task force in the Trump administration, whose name is Leo Terrell, who is a civil rights attorney who has now been tasked with running this thing. And there was a tweet by a prominent neo-Nazi basically saying that Trump can revoke the Jew card, the Jewishness, that guy, the anti-Semitism guy, retweeted.
Well, there should be an outcry from his right-wing friends and Jewish right-wing friends that guy should be fired.
Will you come back when you don't have a book?
Sure. I've been here before without a book.
But come back for a good long one.
Love it.
You have to go pay a Shiva call, so I'm gonna let you know, Senator Chuck Schumer. It was really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Chuck Schumer, leader of the Democratic Party. He really does have to go. His new book, Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning, is out today. You can get it wherever you get your books.